Carrie, as a psychotherapist, what do you see, what are the challenges as we grow our children? What are they taking in these days that maybe they didn't used to be taking in that we need to help with?
I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is the speed of things. That there is less time to process and think something through than used to, whether it's a text message or Facebook or just the speed of how quickly
they're on
everybody
24/7.
24/7. And it's hard to pull them away from that. And I think what we miss out on, which I always say is, when I had a fight with a friend in high school, I had to share the phone with 6 other people that was attached to the kitchen wall and had call waiting, or maybe didn't have call waiting and it beeped and beeped. So I had all that time to sit and say, I'm so mad at her. And then, maybe it was a little my fault. Maybe I had to think about it this way, and it gives us time to process. And I don't think kids get that same opportunity now because we're busy is what everybody talks about.
I think no one's paying attention either because we're living in a world where we're always on.
Right.
So as a parent, how do you care for and nurture this child who's probably going to sleep at night with the iPhone,
Right.
who's always on, who's not sleeping because they have to answer their friend at 2 o'clock
Yes.
in the morning? How do we parent through all of this?
I think one of the first things is really consider whether you want your kid falling asleep with their iPhone, and on it at 2 o'clock in the morning. And there's certainly age and stage decisions that you make around that. But I think that it's important for every family to have some sort of vision of how they want it to be. Because too often we sit back and say, I don't like the way that things are going, but we don't sit and say, let's make a plan of how we want it to go. So I think that is a really essential thing for us to do. The other really, really important thing that I have learned even more as a parent myself is we have to first take care of ourselves. If we want our kids to learn how to slow down, if we want our kids to learn how to handle stress, how to process everything, then we first have to be doing that for ourselves and have a real sense of what it is we want to do as an individual, because our kids are watching every single thing that we're doing, whether they're conscious of it or not. And the more we pay attention to that, the more we're providing kids an environment that is going to be most helpful for them.
You bring up an interesting point because many families have many laptops or PCs at home and they're all on their Kindle or their whatever it is, their electronic device. And we're not having that conversation anymore.
Right.
We're having it with this box in front of us.
I just had to do this talk where there was this cartoon that said, hey Jimmy, we'd love to see you for dinner. How's everything going? Can you shut down your laptop and come downstairs? And, making the joke that that's often how we're communicating. The good news is it's because I can get into a thing of, knocking down all technology. Some of it is good. Some of it allows
because it is connecting us.
It's connecting us in some ways, but I think that we too often are relying on it. So there are some ways to bring people together around that communication. The biggest thing when you talk about family communication, though, is also listening. And
People
a lot
don't
of social
listen.
media, a lot of things is all talking at people, and we've lost that skill of just sitting and having two people having a conversation. And our kids have definitely not had as much exposure to learning how to do that. I have kids who tell me that their relationships with their, significant other or their boyfriend or girlfriend is mostly by text messaging.
Which is crazy.
Right.
I think as humans, we need to be touched, we need to be held,
Right.
we need to have
Look
this
each other in the
conversation.
eyes.
And as you point out, social media allows us to connect in ways we
Right.
never were able to connect with before, but we need to come off of social media
Right.
and then get in a room and have the potluck
Right.
suppers.
Yeah.
And because I think a lot of our kids don't know the art of conversation.
Right.
We've taken, cursive writing out of the schools
Right.
because it's what up dude smiley face on the, on the
Right.
phones.
Right.
So the art of conversation is being lost. And I think there is a hunger as humans to want to have a conversation.
Right. I think we're seeing more and more, I think even my colleagues are seeing more and more anxiety, different kinds of anxiety, people who don't know how to just sit and take a deep breath and feel like they're sitting in a conversation. And we need to model that for our kids. And we need to consciously do that. We need to think about whether when we're sitting and talking to our kids, whether we're checking over on our phone or we're running off to this or we're saying, wait, hold on just a second and I'm doing these things, because then our kids learn that that's how you handle all the busyness of life. So we, again, as parents have to sit and say, What is it we want this environment to be like? And how do we want to create that? And not always just say, it's just the way it is now. This is just the pressures and my kid wants to be on the iPhone. Because I think then sometimes we're letting ourselves off the hook a little bit too easily. It is hard to parent. It's full time. It's 24/7 all the time. And so we have to sometimes say, okay, how do we get the energy to keep making sure that we're making the, doing the role modeling, setting the precedent, setting the environment that we want to set.
And why are you involved with MAID? What are they doing for the town of Madison?
I'm involved in MAID back from even before it was MAID, and back before I was a parent, and really felt like, oh, this is something that kind of pulls people together, that looks at how do we have good things happen in our town? How do we not just look at problems, but also look at solutions? It's so easy to point at all the things going wrong in the world and not be a part of figuring out how to make it right. And I think that just like in the family, that requires the town to have conversations with people. It requires us to sit and say, how are we going to do this, and how are we going to create kind of the environment that we want to do? And one of the things that kept me going with MAID is when they started to do more work with assets. Because I think it is so awesome to be talking about what things go right and how to add positive things to people's lives, as opposed to saying this is wrong and this is what the problem is and these parents are doing this thing wrong and that, because that gets draining. And I think that MAID is really looking to engage and energize the community, and what's better than that?
Kiri, thanks for helping Madison find its way.
Well, I think it truly takes a whole bunch of people to do it, and the good thing is it's cyclical. As I learn from the community, I take it back into my own home. I take things from my home and I figure out how to do it in my private practice. I take things from private practice and I figure out how to bring that into MAID. And I think that we have to keep having those different interchanges and think about how we take these small group things into big groups and vice versa.
Thanks so much.